At 7:21, with a look at your traffic and weather, I'm Matt Neely on 1030 The Voice. Traffic incident, La Cholla at Ina. A traffic hazard, La Cañada at Tangerine. And a crash, Ajo at Old Ajo Highway. Traffic hazard, Speedway at Grande. On your freeways, slowing on I-10 eastbound between Ina and Sunset Links. Tucson weather, high today 102 degrees, a 20% chance of afternoon and evening thunderstorms, overnight low 78. 104 for your high tomorrow, 30% chance of storms under partly cloudy skies. It is 82 degrees. Now let's go back to the morning voice. Hey, Ted, we are on YouTube. 1030 The Voice is the channel if you'd like to follow along and watch us.
And welcome back. This is the Morning Voice. I'm Ted Maxwell, your host. That was Matt Neely pitching the YouTube live stream. That means we might be on cameras again, so I've got to start being cautious. But it's always good. It's a great opportunity to listen to the Morning Voice or to watch it in this case. Sometimes you get to see the guests and us on the network. And I know Matt and the team here at KVOI and Bustos Media is putting a lot of time and effort into enhancing our capability and our streaming.
Working our way through it, Ted. It's always fun.
Technology.
Yeah. Keep an
technology.
Put another plate in the air to spin. It's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned as we went out that I wanted to talk about an article that Tim Steller wrote this weekend called Tucson Job Seekers Need an Economic Jolt. Project Blue was the thing everybody was talking about for a couple of weeks. And 2 weeks ago, the city 7-0 vote said, nope, not here, not doing it. We're going to change some of the rules we have in our region. We're going to, they're addressing high water users, any business that uses a lot of water. I think they said 7.26 million gallons, annually. So they're putting numbers behind the concerns. And the county yesterday at their Board of Supervisors meeting also mentioned they're going to put it on. But Tim's article this weekend really highlighted a lot of things. One, there was a plan a long time ago. They took the city and the county economic development groups, merged them all, formed TRIO, which then became Sun Corridor, and now is the chamber working inside the Chamber of Southern Arizona. And for a regional approach. And if you talk to the Sun Corridor, if you talk to Joe Snell, the CEO of the Chamber of Southern Arizona, he'll tell you he's brought multiple different entities to this community, and the community routinely says, no, we don't want that kind of business. One of the biggest businesses we've got in this community, and one of the biggest areas, is our defense sector. We've got 2 Air Force bases here in Tucson. Raytheon, who, by the way, the business, not really a pun, but business is booming. They are.
I see what you did there.
There you go.
Yeah.
They have orders on top of orders. They are driving some new money coming into the region. And that was kind of the point of one of Tim's article. And as we were talking about, you said we need new money in this region to stimulate growth. I think your quote
like
was
1,000 jobs from Grand Canyon University.
No duh.
Yeah.
We need money that's coming in that's going to provide new opportunities.
Yeah.
We don't need Grant will take care of all the food for thought tomorrow, but you bring in a new restaurant and that's great. It's good. It gives us as citizens in this region more opportunity, maybe a new choice, a new idea. But guess what? We're going to spend money there that we're probably already spending locally. You bring in a new furniture store, as Tim cites in his article. That just is going to take business away from another furniture store. You need new money, new businesses coming into this region, and you need to stop saying no. So I support, the article kind of says they don't want to see the cities or the counties putting new economic plans in. I'm okay. If the city wants to let the folks who work in economic development know what the type of businesses you want here in Tucson. But then when they bring those businesses to you, there shouldn't be a public process.
Well, you got the people saying we want to have an election over any business coming to town. We want to put it up.
We are a representative form of government, people. You've elected these people. They make the decisions. And when they aren't willing to make the decisions, they go to you. And what came down to Project Blue, a lot of it, was they were uncomfortable. And so we did 3 hearings, of which The one that was virtual was incredible. People actually learned about Project Blue, learned the requirements. The speakers were allowed to speak. The other two that were public hearings were ridiculous. People booing. The first one, at least the speakers got to get through their presentation. By the time you got to the third, there were members in the audience from SLC that went there to learn and to listen and to support the concept. And they couldn't hear a word the speaker said because Carrie Sylvan, Ryan Anderson, they all just were being yelled down by the audience. Yelled down. Well, that's one we've talked about on this show. That's not your First Amendment right to yell down a speaker at a public hearing. Right. That's not the intent. But they became spectacles. And when it became obviously overwhelming in the press reporting on it, everything else, boom, 7-0, Project Blue, you're out.
And we'll throw the city manager under the bus for good measure.
Yeah. So again, I don't have a problem if the city wants to define and provide input to the economic development groups in the region, like the Chamber of Southern Arizona. But when they bring them in, that means you've pre-screened it. It can't. Okay, well, you're bringing me this company in this sector of industry I'm good with. We're going to have a couple public hearings on it. No, if you want it to happen and you want things to be done, you need to do it. Tim, in his article, establishes that we've got some very strong sectors. Aerospace and defense. He led with it. There's protests all over the place about no more aerospace and defense. Bioscience and diagnostics, Roche. That's one we can do really. Yeah. Transportation and logistics, especially with the trade to Mexico.
Sure.
And renewable and mining technologies.
Yeah.
There's another area.
Mining or mining technologies?
They say mining technologies, but you don't get mining. You don't get the benefits of mining technologies unless you support mining.
So I'll challenge the author of that column to put his money where his mouth is and go on a public tirade supporting the Copper World mine and put some pressure on the city to get some quote unquote new money in town, if that's so important.
And that's the key, is if you're going to get new money, people have to start supporting it. And if we're going to get jobs, he points out in the article, our unemployment rate is only 4.7. I'm not worried about the unemployment rate because that's only people actively seeking jobs.
Right.
What I'm worried about is the poverty rate.
Yeah.
And if we really want to address poverty, and for the record, I'm a firm believer that if we address poverty, that's how you address crime. That's how.
Amen, Brother Ted.
That's how you address quality of life. That's how you address people's prosperity. Prosperity is not attained by government handouts. It's attained by giving people good paying jobs that they can grow in and succeed for their own family and for future generations.
Amen.
So there we go. So if you haven't read Tim Steller's article, I'd suggest doing it. It's a Sunday edition of the Arizona Daily Star. It had a lot of great points. It had a lot of places that I may not agree, but overall, it called it out. We need to bring new money in if we're going to prosper. We'll be back with Senate President Warren Peterson, more importantly, candidate for Attorney General for the state of Arizona. You're listening to 1030 The Voice, your trusted local news and talk station. Welcome back. You're listening to The Morning Voice. I'm your host, Ted Maxwell. Matt Neely behind the glass. Matt, appreciate the conversation that first half hour. It flies. We had 4 or 5 different issues to get to, and we got to 2. But always enjoy it. It's always good conversation.
Good stuff.
Appreciate your insight. So we're honored to have with us for this next half hour is Arizona State Senate President Warren Peterson. Warren, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Ted.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I just want to make it clear to everybody that in today's interview process, you won't be in that role of Arizona State to Senate President and talking about the legislature. We're going to save that for another day, and I hope you'll come back before the session begins to talk about the next session. But right now, you are a candidate, and you're in the process of collecting your signatures, raising funds to run for the Arizona State Attorney General position.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting. This race wasn't really on my radar. I was elected to the legislature 13 years ago. And it's easy to take the attorney general for granted, I think, until you get a really radical lefty like we have right now. And as we've been coming up on 2026, a lot of people from the legal community basically came to me and recruited me to run, said, Warren, the AG's office is a mess. You need to save it. I'm super passionate about defending the Constitution, fighting crime. I've got a long history of doing that at the legislature. And so, I took the call and I filed to run, and it's been going very well.
Well, I want to thank you for all your previous service. You're a third-generation Gilbert resident, and you're a graduate of Gilbert High School. You got your bachelor's degree from ASU as well as your law degree from ASU. What was it that 13 years ago got you interested in running for public office? And if you can give a little bit more of your background
Sure.
growing up, just because there's not a lot of folks in Southern Arizona that may be, fully aware of who you are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, my family has always been very passionate about, very patriotic. Both my grandparents really instilled patriotism into me. What got me involved was, interestingly, when Obama got elected. I just couldn't believe America selected him as our president, especially with some openly socialistic views. And I was part of the Tea Party wave that came in and was, fed up with what was happening. And naturally, I got involved locally. Was pretty surprised to see what was going on at my city council, school boards, legislature. So I decided to run for the legislature, won, and I've been at the legislature, since then.
You started in the legislature in the House of Representatives, but you currently have moved over to the Senate, or you've risen to the role of Senate President. You've done that through your ability to obviously outreach, to build coalitions, to work within the party and across the aisle when need be. What was it do you believe you brought to the Senate or to the House as well, but to the legislature that had some of the most impact in why you've been successful, and you've obviously gotten reelected for 12 straight years, and you have to run every 2 years. Not easy.
Yeah, 7 elections, 7 wins. I think what it is, I'm just really passionate about liberty and freedom, the role of government. The role of government is to protect our individual rights. So that's always first and foremost in my mind as I'm crafting policy or voting on policy. I joke about this, but it's true. I mean, I'm a middle child, so I'm a consensus builder. I like to work things out with people. The legislature's nobody does anything on their own at the legislature. So sometimes people will say, I did this or I did that. But really what you did is you built a consensus with 48. You were able to get 48 people to agree with you. And as far as leadership goes, I've been able to work with the caucuses to help, build a consensus. And I'm a huge proponent of decorum, respect, civility, agree to disagree. And so I think people have, encouraged me to be in leadership as the majority leader in the House, now president of the Senate. And I think or at least what I hear from my members. And one reason I think I was this cycle unanimously voted back in as Senate President is that they like how I will, even when they disagree with me, I can focus on the areas of agreement, and we can, come to a solution, and we can do it in a way that's, with respect and dignity. So I think, as conservatives, we make the most progress that way. Sometimes people in politics, it gets personal, and then you lose ground and progress because people are focused on, something personal instead of what we have in common and making progress.
And you demonstrated that this year, I believe, in the legislature because you were the critical Republican voice during the budget negotiations, and that was not an easy budget to work out. As you said, there's some give and take. So you have, I think, in that respect, demonstrated the ability to find some common ground to move forward.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we had some big wins. Here's what people, and I think people who are close to the process know this, but we've had a Democrat governor now for 3 years, and the media has consistently said, these are Republican budgets. We've actually, of course, she's got to sign it, so there has to be some compromise there, but every budget really, we've won, and early on, she's had to fire people. She took heat. For this cycle, in fact, we did our third tax cut in 3 years. So every year we've cut taxes, even with her. And two things actually, I got into the budget that nobody could believe afterwards. I didn't make a big deal about it during the budget because I didn't want it to get removed from the budget. But first of all, I got $4 billion into the budget for election integrity for the Maricopa County Recorder. That is hard to believe that I was able to negotiate that with the governor. And the second thing is that I got, there were 2 Bloomberg paid attorneys in the AG's office. I was able to get that into the budget, that they would no longer be funded by Bloomberg, can no longer be funded by a third party. That will go into effect September 26th. And I don't even think the governor talked to Mays about that because Shirley Mays would push back heavily against that. But so we've been able to get some huge Republican wins in spite of divided government.
Oh, that's an interesting one, Senator, because I had never heard that through the process, and it's surprising to me that you would even be allowed to have outside third-party funded lawyers working in the state government office. So that's eye-opening. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, well, now thanks to law, I passed amazingly under a Democrat governor. We will not have that anymore. So people don't need to worry about Soros or Bloomberg, or quite frankly, it works both ways, that you have these right-leaning groups that are influencing employees in government offices. These offices should be enforcing the law and doing it in a non-biased way.
Well, you've received a lot of recognition down in the Senate down in the legislature to include Legislature of the Year by the Voice of Small Business. You've gotten Hero of the Taxpayer, ranked #1 for your tax budget and regulatory issues by the Goldwater Institute, which is obviously a big thing. And even Arizona Rock Products Associations and the Center for Arizona Policy have recognized your ability to stand up and ensure limitation regulatory requirements, or at least improving regulatory requirements that are out there. So why, after all that success, are you ready to run into a statewide election?
Well, again, it was people. Here's what people have told me. So I'm endorsed by, the legal community, former prosecutor, Congressman Andy Biggs. I'm endorsed by Attorney General Derek Brown. I'm endorsed by County Prosecutor Brad Miller, County Prosecutor Scott Bennett, several sheriffs, law enforcement, so on. And really, one of the big things is these statewide races are really tough to win. Arizona's demographics are a little over a third Republican, about a third independent, and a little less than a third Democrat.
That's a great point.
You need a candidate that can win all the Republicans, get half the independents plus one person, right? 51%, 50.1%, just over 50%, and to win these races. And in my 7 races, the 7 times I've run, the 7 times I've won, I have outperformed the statewide candidates and the federal candidates. And so I think what they see as a candidate, what I've been told is you're a candidate that can totally win this. The evidence shows that. And then I have the proven conservative record. So of 13 years, everybody knows what I'm going to do. They know that I'm a consistent conservative. They know that they can count. They know what they're going to get when I go into office. And they also know I'm somebody who can win in the general election.
That's the voice of Senate President Warren Peterson, candidate for Attorney General of Arizona. You can find more information about him at Peterson, and it's PETERSEN for AG, and it is FORAG.com. And we will give you that in the second half when we come back. Senator, I'd like to take a break now, and when we come back, let's start talking about some of the issues that you think are of the utmost importance for the AG to be working on.
Sounds great.
All right, you're listening to 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk, and we'll be right back.
At 7:48, with a look at your traffic and weather, I'm Matt Neely on 1030 The Voice. Traffic hazard Irvington and Kolb. Another on Alvernon between Technical Drive and 40th Street. Traffic incident. Ajo Highway at Old Ajo Way. And a traffic hazard Speedway at Grande. On your freeway, slowing on I-10 eastbound just after you pass Twin Peaks all the way to Sunset. And on I-10 westbound, slowing between Wilmot and Valencia. Tucson weather, high today 102 degrees, a 20% chance of afternoon and evening thunderstorms, overnight low 78, 104, and a 30% chance of storms tomorrow. Under partly cloudy skies, it's 82 degrees. Now back to the morning voice.
Welcome back. I'm glad that you stayed with us through the break. And if you're just joining us, appreciate you listening in. This morning, we've got Arizona Senate President Warren Peterson with us. And today we're discussing his candidacy for Attorney General. So it's kind of a challenge for you, senators. You're going to maintain your role into the coming legislative session, and at the same time, you're running for Attorney General, and that creates some problems. So that's why this time period is really important to you. Can you kind of explain to the listeners why that's so?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge, quarter. This is really the period where all the races for 2026, where the field is being set, because you actually file early next session. And so the folks who are getting into the race, probably the latest anybody could be getting into the races now. This is also critical because, of course, when I'm off session, it's when I have the most time to campaign. I have done 48. I just did my 48th event, actually down in Tucson. Met with LD18, had a great meeting down there. And so we are on the ground from, we're all over the state. And we've got great grassroots support, so that's going well. But this time between now and the session is critical. We've got a lot of events everywhere, and so we're making sure it counts.
And I know it's challenging because during the session you have limitations that are placed on you for your ability to raise funds as well. And so I appreciate you continuing to serve as you do this, and it's going to be an interesting year for you next year. We'll see if you're able to get out on a shorter session and get back on the campaign trail.
Yeah, no, I think we will. I mean, we had new leadership in the House. They had a theory they wanted to follow. I think that theory did not pan out. I think they're going to be back on having an efficient session.
Well, let's hit a couple of the issues. Arizona's Attorney General Chris Mays just ruled that the county recorders cannot unilaterally cancel the registration of the individuals who had received their voter registration and driver's license before citizenship was required. From your perspective, as an Attorney General, and you've talked a lot about election integrity, it falls under the Secretary of State, but ultimately the rule of law is defined by the Attorney General. What are your thoughts on some of the current AG's decisions when it comes to voter integrity?
Yeah, well, she is consistently wrong on the law and the facts. Her win rate actually is abysmal. She doesn't win a lot of cases. On the other hand, it's interesting because here in Arizona, the Arizona Senate President has standing if the AG is not defending the law. And consequently, I have been involved in over 80 lawsuits because our AG is not defending our laws. So just a couple of examples. I mean, in election integrity, we passed a law that made sure that non-citizens could not vote. She did not defend that law. So Chris Mays in election integrity she does not support election integrity. She did not defend the law. I defended the law, spent all day in deposition. That lawsuit has gone up to the Supreme Court, back down to the Ninth Circuit right now. We are working hard to make sure only citizens are voting in our elections. Another one, I can't go over all 80, but another one that's really important in Arizona, California passed a rule to try to mandate that said any trucks in Arizona that did business with California would have to electrify their trucks. Obviously, that cost a fortune. Chris Mays, if you know her, she's a radical environmentalist, so she liked that. She didn't do anything, but I sued California, and 5 weeks ago won. Arizona truckers are not going to have to electrify their trucks. So on and on and on. Like I said, there's 80 lawsuits that I'm involved in because she is not protecting Arizona's interests.
So I would tell you as a member of the State Transportation Board, Senator, that electrifying all the trucks would absolutely destroy all of our roads. It would be a bad thing. So that's a side note. If you want more information, you can go to Peterson for AG. That's Petersen forag.com. You can find more about the issues that are important to him, but it's also a way you can sign his petition if you want to support his candidacy for Attorney General. And there's a little blue button on the far right side that says donate. So I do want to give you an opportunity. We've got about 2 more minutes, 3 more minutes. Just heard Matt did us a favor and picked up another minute back there. So we got 3 minutes. What are the other big issues that, as Attorney General, you want to make sure get addressed and ensure they comply with the law?
You bet. And it's really a lot along the lines of what President Trump has done on the border. It's really just do your job. I went down to the border with attorneys general from the entire country. I took them on a little border tour, and the border was completely secure. Nobody crossed when we were there. And it's the safest it's ever been in the history of Arizona. Why? He didn't need a new law. He's just enforcing the laws. And so as AG, it's the same thing. You need to focus on what your job is. She focuses on environmentalism. What I would be focusing on is what the AG should be doing, and that is fighting crime, defending our laws and the Constitution, and eliminating government corruption. Now, I have been able to defend our laws and defend the Constitution, fortunately, because there is a statute that gives me standing, so I can kind of fill in the gaps for her on that issue. Not completely, but I've been able to kind of patch things up, like this lawsuit with California to save Arizona from these electric trucks. But she's soft on crime. She suspended the death penalty here in Arizona. Now, what's interesting is she suspended it for 2 years, and I criticized her for that. And she's definitely worried about losing her election, so she has, recently started that back up. But she is soft on crime. I will absolutely make sure that the AG's number one focus is keeping Arizona safe. I'm not going to let Arizona drift to California. And under her, that is exactly where we will go, especially in a second term where she's more bold to do that. Eliminating government corruption. She's just letting these things that we've been seeing from Hobbs, from agencies where there's been fraud with Medicaid, where it looks like Hobbs, our governor, took illegal contributions. All of these things, she's not focusing on those. She's not investigating those things. Those things would be, vociferously investigated by me. And of course, the election integrity aspect. We will have the most robust election integrity unit in the history of Arizona.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today. I also appreciate your stance that's outlined on your website about protecting Arizona's sovereignty. I'm a big states' rights individual. So I wish you the best of luck, and that's Arizona State Senate President Warren Peterson, candidate for Arizona Attorney General. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to having you back in the future.
Love it. Thanks, Ted. See ya.
All right. Take care. You're listening to 1030 The Voice. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
At 8 o'clock, with a look at your news headlines, I'm Matt Neely on 1030 The Voice. Pima County is considering new zoning rules that would require conditional use permits for future data centers and other large-scale industrial projects. The move follows the collapse of Project Blue, a proposed data center halted by the Tucson City Council after public concerns about water, energy use, and secrecy agreements. Supervisor Jen Allen said the changes would add transparency and public input, while Supervisor Steve Christie warned it could hurt economic growth. Tucson City Council is also weighing a large water user ordinance this week. A man who made threats at a Tucson school has been sentenced to prison and a lengthy probation term. Daniel Hollander pleaded guilty to interfering with an educational institution, making a terrorist threat, and burglary. For that, he was given 18 months in prison with credit for time served, followed by 2 consecutive 5-year probation terms. The case stems from a January incident at Legacy Traditional School East, Tucson, where police arrested him with a gun and a knife. State Schools Chief Tom Horn criticized the sentence as too lenient. A bee attack in Tucson yesterday sent 2 people to the hospital. The Tucson Fire Department said it happened at a mobile home park near Grant and Swan. The 2 injured were both stung multiple times. Tucson Fire says an exterminator came out and took care of the problem, but neighbors were warned there could be agitated bees still in the area. And the Arizona Media Association and Clean Elections are presenting a debate in the Congressional District 7 special election between Democrat Adelaide Grijalva and Republican Daniel Gutierrez. The debate is next Tuesday, August 26th at 6 p.m. The debate will air right here on 1030 The Voice. If you plan to vote in that election, the registration deadline is Monday, August 25th. Tucson weather, high today 102 degrees, a 30% chance of thunderstorms, dropping to 20% tonight. Overnight low 78. Tomorrow, a high of 104 and a 30% chance of storms. Temps around 105 Thursday and Friday with low probabilities for storms. Warm temps and slight storm chances continue through the weekend. The Weather Service once again says they think there will be a better chance for rain next week. We all know how that one goes. With a few clouds still working their way through Tucson, it is 82 degrees. Dew point is 64 degrees and light winds out of the southeast. Now let's go back to the Morning Voice. Tuesday civic engagement with Ted Maxwell and his guest, Pima County Supervisor Rex Scott.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Morning Voice. I hope you've been with us in the first hour and you got to hear a pretty thorough discussion between me and Matt on a couple issues of concern to the region. And then we had Arizona State Senator Warren Peterson, a candidate for Attorney General of the state of Arizona, on in the second half. Appreciate him taking the time to join us today. We are now joined by Supervisor Rex Scott, the chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. You're in your second term now, Rex, and appreciate you taking the time to join us today. There's so much to talk about going on in Pima County and in this region.
There always is, Ted, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you and Matt and your listeners. I was remarking to you that it's brighter in here than what I'm used to when I'm in here with Mr. Buckmaster. He keeps it little darker.
Yeah, I've been waiting to come in and see Bill with some incense burning and maybe some of those, bowls that you spin to get sound and noise. But yeah, it's early morning. I've got the coffee. I've got my other things. I need the brightness. It's time to wake up. And,
you're even wearing
keep
a
me
tie.
Well, come on, you know me. That's how it normally goes.
It is.
Plus, now that we are live streaming on YouTube and on Facebook, they can actually see you.
Oh, all right.
So
Very
that's something
cool.
to take note of.
All right.
We don't have the TV on in here yet. Otherwise, I tell you, you could look over your left shoulder and see it. But we didn't turn it on this morning, so it's good. So a lot going on. You had a board meeting yesterday.
Yes.
And I told you we were going to talk about RTA, but now I'm going to just pivot.
Okay.
So what were the big issues that came out of yesterday's board meeting?
So a couple of things. First of all, we were taking a look at how to, you just used the word pivot, how to pivot from the fact that ever since the Pima Early Education Program scholarships were in place, we had been getting, mostly because they had additional money from the federal government from the pandemic, about $1 million a year, sometimes $750,000 a year from the city of Tucson. And this budget year, they've cut that in half, and they've let us know that in the future, we can't expect any more contributions to that program. So our colleague from District 5, Supervisor Cano, had a item on the agenda that not only used some funds from the library reserve, but also to make up for the funds that the city is no longer contributing, but also had some references to the need for a broader community discussion about the future of the Pima Early Education Program scholarships. And I appreciated that in attendance was one of your colleagues from the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, Dr. John Petticone, because SALC has always been a big supporter of PEEPS. I appreciated that Zach Yenser from the Chamber of Southern Arizona was there. And we were talking about not only how to make up for this lack of funding that we had counted on since the beginning of the program, but how to move forward and make sure that the program is well supported and viable in the future.
Well, SALC is a longtime supporter of that program. Obviously, helped to do some legislation to clarify the proper use of the library districts and what they could and couldn't be used. Different county attorneys, surprisingly, had different rulings, and Pima's was the one that stood out and said, no, you can't. We're going, well, what's the purpose of library? It's to teach people to read. It's early childhood literacy. There's a lot of ways to go about doing it, but we have had support. We're not yet there where we want with support from the public, from the communities. The program was never envisioned to be purely a government-funded program, and I think that's part of the revitalization that you talked about of some of the ongoing discussions is how can we get more funding into the program. SALC, it grew out of a time where we opposed to half-cent sales tax because it was universal, right. And we think means testing on programs like that is very important. I had the ability, Mike, to fund my kids going to early childhood education programs, and it was right for 3 of them, not for all 4. So it's you've got to leave the parents in that role, and I think we can do that by means testing it, making sure that the funds that we have go to the families that are most needed and who would not be able to get early childhood education for their children otherwise. And that's my opinion.
Well, and your opinion is exactly the way the program is structured, because we follow the lead of Arizona's First Things First program in terms of eligibility being extended to families who are at 300% of the federal poverty level. And those are the folks who the $800 average monthly cost for early childhood education may be out of reach. And we've been able to help thousands of Pima County families, thousands of Pima County children since this program was put in place. I've said many times, I think it's the most important expenditure in our budget. And that may sound like a grandiose claim, but when you think about the fact that when you invest in one child, what that means to that child and their family, you can't put a price tag on that. And when you're investing in thousands of children, you're investing in the potential and the future of our community. And I'm really proud that we've had the support of not just the preschool community and the K-12 districts, but the business community, because we're able to say to people who want to expand or locate a business in Pima County that we've got a vibrant preschool to higher ed continuum. And preschool is really the one area where the county can play a role.
And there are long-term studies. A lot of people say, well, if you give somebody preschool and then you put them in the schools and they're not in good quality schools, they're going to fall behind again. They're not going to gain the benefit. The fact is, historically, it shows that they actually stay higher on the level, slightly above,
definitely,
than those who either didn't have the environment at home teaching them to get an early start on reading and some of the stuff, but also those who did not have the opportunity to send a good, high quality preschool. So there is an advantage. And more importantly, the studies will show you that the likelihood that they'll be in jail at the age of 18 or using our narcotics also goes down.
Definitely.
Based on that. It is a personal choice for families, and I believe that that's where it should be. But some families don't have that choice because of the cost barrier. So appreciate you as a former educator continuing to push to support that. That's great. That's a great thing. Now, was the final property tax set yesterday, or was that done a couple weeks ago?
Well, we set the property tax rate when we passed the budget. But yesterday was a really kind of a ministerial responsibility of the board to authorize all of the tax levies in the county, not just the counties, but also the levies that are set by all of the other taxing districts in the counties who also set their budgets last month.
So can you talk about, that's one that's always, it's been around when you were talking for reelection, it became a huge issue. There's always issues on those discussions. The tax rate this year, did it end up going up or down for this year?
It ended up going up, and I was listening to your guest in the first hour, who is the president of the Arizona Senate. And for the last several legislatures and the last several governors, both parties, the state has shifted costs that are the responsibilities of the state to counties and other local governments. And we have a board policy in place that will increase the local property tax rate to be equivalent to the amount of money that we are being charged by the legislature and the governor to take on their state responsibilities. So right around the strong majority of the property tax increase was directly related to state cost shifts. We voted at the last board meeting and this was something that I introduced, and it was supported by a majority of the board, to reduce the property tax rate for all of the increases related to county operations. The county administrator told us that she could do that. We made that reduction. So the increases that you see in both the primary property tax and the library district and flood control property taxes are all related to state cost shifts.
So can you give us, the listener, some examples of what those cost shifts were that led to that decision to raise? Because the county had been doing a pretty decent job of reducing the rate. Doesn't necessarily mean the total amount you pay goes down, because home values are going up, the assessor's values are going up. But we don't need to go there. What I want to know is, what was it that led this year to actually having to increase the rate?
It was those state cost shifts, and those cost shifts are primarily in the areas of Arizona's long-term healthcare system and costs for running our courts. There are other areas where there have also been cost shifts to local governments, but those are the two big areas.
Okay, well, that's great. As you know, SLC is an organization that's always saying, let's not always rely on raising the rates. You have to when you do, and those are decisions as elected officials you are tasked with making, but also growing the pie. So when we come back from the break, let's talk about Project Blue. Now the discussion's going on both at the city level and it sounds like the county is also going to take up in trying to define some things either around data centers or around economic development. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. With me is Rex Scott, chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and we'll be right back after the break. Stay with us.
At 17 minutes after 8 o'clock with a look at your traffic and weather, I'm Matt Neely on 1030 The Voice. There's a crash at Broadway and Alvernon, another Tangerine and La Cholla, traffic hazard 12th Avenue and Veterans. Crash La Cholla at 36th Street, traffic hazard Irvington and Kolb, and that's got you backed up on northbound Kolb quite a ways. You expect quite a delay there, Irvington and Kolb, northbound on Kolb. And a traffic incident, Ajo at Old Ajo Highway. On your freeway, slowing on I-10 westbound between Kolb and Craycroft. I-10 eastbound slowing between Twin Peaks and Sunset Links. And brief slowing on I-10 westbound as you pass Craycroft. Tucson weather, high today 102 degrees, 20% chance of storms. Overnight low 78, 104 for your high tomorrow with a 30% chance of storms.
Welcome back. Appreciate you joining us at The Morning Voice, 5 days a week, 5 different hosts, 5 different ideas and concepts, but always, I believe, some good conversation that either makes your drive time or your morning coffee at home a lot easier and hopefully keeps you entertained as well as provides you some insight. Tomorrow, for The Morning Voice, the host is Grant Kruger for Food for Thought, and he will be having Ben Ryan, chef and owner of Divine Bovine, with him as well, because Grant always mixed the politics with the food conversations. Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb. So it sounds like a great show for Grant tomorrow on The Morning Voice. So I strongly encourage everyone to listen in and join him for tomorrow's radio. It's always about trying to create good radio on this. So I've got with me Pima County Board of Supervisor Rex Scott, the chair from Pima County. You represent, full disclosure, District 1, which is my district up in Oro Valley. Let's talk a little bit about economic development.
Great.
Or the jobs and opportunity. I want to take it a little farther in there. We'll start with Project Blue, because Project Blue got you a lot of attention. You came out supportive of it. It came through a 3-2 vote. Which I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a 4-1, but it was a 3-2 in either way. So you sent it forward, and then the fun began. So it was interesting. So do you want to talk a little bit about your thought of why you were supportive of it?
Absolutely. When I was first briefed on Project Blue as the chair of the board, because there's a board regulation that says that the chair is briefed early on with regard to significant economic development projects that might come before the board, right away, based on what I knew about data centers, I had questions about water and power. And I really felt that this project was almost the anti-data center in terms of how they proactively tried to address water and power issues. And I especially appreciated that every drop of water that they were going to use, not just the potable water in the first 2 years before the reclaimed water line, 18-mile reclaimed water line was built, but also that reclaimed water, they were going to replenish everything that they used by working with Tucson Water on river restoration, stormwater detention, other water projects that are part of the One Water 2100 plan.
Fixing lines, pipes.
Yes.
I mean, there was a whole lot of
Yes.
things they were willing to put their money into, which would save Tucson Water.
And it was all aligned with Tucson Water's long-term infrastructure and water replenishment plans. I also was blown away, to be honest, with the amount of money that they were going to expend, right around $100 million, to give us infrastructure that, again, was part of that One Water 2100 plan. Not only the 18-mile reclaimed water pipeline.
18 miles of pipeline.
18 miles. And part of that pipeline would eventually serve the Los Reales Sustainability Campus that currently uses 100 million gallons of drinking water a year. It also would have funded a 30-acre recharge facility that would have helped to further our efforts with underground water storage, which is one reason why our aquifer and our groundwater is in better condition than some other areas of the state. There was also the capital investment, $3.6 billion, the biggest capital investment in the history of this county, $250 million in increased tax revenue over a 10-year period for both the state, county, and city governments. And that was just for phase one. 180 full-time jobs, and only 1% of the industries in Pima County have more than that number of employees. So giving that number of jobs short shrift, which a lot of the opponents of Project Blue did, was ignoring the facts in terms of what a significant number of jobs that is. And the reason the trade unions were so supportive of it is over the course of full build out, you could have had right around 3,000 construction jobs in this community. So I believe
For an estimated 10 years.
for an
as well.
estimated 10 years. Exactly. So I believed in our capacity, our ability to deal with the water and power issues. And it shouldn't have escaped anybody's attention that the county administrator and the city manager both recommended approval of Project Blue. These are long-standing public servants whose jobs are dependent on making sound recommendations to the people who appoint them. I don't think they would have made those recommendations if they didn't see the balance between environmental stewardship and economic development. So I was proud to vote for Project Blue, and I was glad that the 2 votes that we took were supported by a majority of the board, but then it went forward. And frankly, the public process that the city engaged in, I referred to it in a guest column in the Sentinel as unproductive spectacles. And not because they had the meetings. That's not the issue. Certainly you should have public input. We had 2 public hearings about Project Blue before we took our votes. The issue was you can't ask staff to run meetings like that. You know, I have a lot of respect for the city manager and the public information officer for the city, who were the 2 people who ran those 2 public meetings. But when you have a meeting that's going to be that contentious, that intense, elected leaders need to play a role in terms of holding people accountable for their behavior. And I appreciated what you said in the first hour, Ted, as I was listening when I came down here. You don't have a First Amendment right to talk over somebody, to swear at them, to essentially diminish them as a human being. That was another thing I said in my Sentinel column is, do we really want to treat each other this way?
And I will take it. If they wanted to stand outside the meeting and yell at each other, the 2 sides, and hold their signs, and that's fine. And I'm not telling you can't bring signs. I'm not telling you can't applaud at times, but it's got to be respectful. What bothered me, one, is I think your point on who should have been running the meeting and taking charge of it is valid, only because they're the ones, as the elected officials, who called these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they may not have been the formal public meeting inside the chambers, but they were called public meeting, informational meetings. It's very clear in law that First Amendment rights don't allow you to interrupt a public meeting. And the third meeting, the first one was bad enough.
Yes.
Matter of fact, one of our employees got hit with a sign on the way out, SALC member, because they were questioning why he was there, obviously with business. And he said, well, you know, it might help if you actually listen to what they're talking about in there. And the lady, bam, hit him on the head with a sign. And he went, just kept on walking. It's like, really? But that second one was ridiculous. You invited Carrie Sylvan to come speak. You invited Ryan Anderson. You invited the folks from Beale. You invited their water infrastructure people to all come and speak. 30 minutes of the 2-hour process, they all got up and just ramrodded their script, to which nobody could hear. Nobody could hear. And nobody said anything. It's not, the meeting wasn't done with dignity. It wasn't done with respect. And I thought it was an awful look for the city of Tucson. Awful look. And there are going to be companies that are going to see that and they're going, I don't want anything of it. So I appreciated the fact that you did speak out. And it didn't help that there were comments from the mayor and council directed at Pima County saying, you guys failed. You were the ones that should have stopped this originally. And obviously, that was not the consensus of the board, or nor is now, I would bet.
No. And, to me, I described those comments in my column in the Sentinel as gratuitous because not only were they inappropriate, but they were unnecessary. You can cast your vote based on your analysis of the facts without criticizing another elected body and our staff. That was the thing that probably irritated me the most. No one's accountable for my vote as a public official other than me. And there was a lot of pointing of fingers and blaming of staff in that meeting that I thought was, again, gratuitous. And I'm the chair of the board. And if somebody's going to not just criticize the board, but criticize our staff, I'm going to respond to that. And I think it's very important for us to remember and you just made this point, that we shouldn't be treating each other that way as occurred in the public meeting at the convention center. But we also need to be cognizant of the fact that there are people outside the region who are looking at spectacles like that and asking themselves, do I really want to subject my employees, my workforce, to that kind of behavior? And we already heard at a recent meeting of the Chamber of Southern Arizona that I attended that their staff is already hearing from people who were thinking about coming here that they are taking Tucson and Pima County off of their list of potential places to come because of what they saw during the Project Blue public meetings.
I have heard the same thing. So that's the voice of Rex Scott, Pima County Board of Supervisors Chair. Appreciate him joining us. He's going to stay for the next half of the show, and we'll be right back, talk a little more economic development, maybe a little RTA, which is directly impactful for economic development, and other issues important in the county. You're listening to 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. Thank you for staying with us, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation today. My guest is Pima County Board Chair Rex Scott, representing District 1. If you want to call in and get involved in the conversation, I know we're both open to taking any of your questions, 520-790-2040. That's 520-790-2040. So we talked about Project Blue, which for those of you who may have been listening and were confused on what Project Blue was, it was a data center effort that was going into Tucson that would have brought a lot of economic development, a lot of jobs, and a lot of potential opportunity and businesses in place. And the county's talking about doing that too. I think that's if there's businesses that the elected officials definitely want, they need to speak up and say that these are the kind of businesses we're looking for, but they have to be open for criticism. Because some of the criticism may come from the business community that says you are missing too many segments. Because you know what? I don't think the city of Tucson would get behind an organization like Raytheon. Well, Raytheon's our huge economic driver. Without Raytheon, this region would be nothing in a lot, except for the University of Arizona, which is not nothing, as a big Wildcat fan. But the county's considered doing this as well. But the other thing, once you've set those things and said, this is what we want, if that economic development organization, if the Chamber of Southern Arizona brings companies in and that, there's no time to discuss it anymore. Sign the paperwork and go. If you're going to do the public hearings and take input and decide what you're going to want to do, once you've established that policy, if they bring those companies, it's time to go. And I think that's an important thing. What is the county talking about doing in the way of economic development, and maybe specifically to data centers? I know you've talked about that.
So I was intrigued by the column that Mayor Romero had in the Star, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, with regard to the program that she signed up for with Harvard University, sponsored by former New York City Mayor Bloomberg. And what she said was, over the next 12 months, I'd like the community to join with me in revitalizing our economic development plans. I don't think that there's any doubt that she will bring to the table a lot of interesting information that she gathers from taking part in that program. But there is already in place a strong regional infrastructure, and I'm emphasizing regional, to further our economic development goals. Mayor Romero joined me, Senators Kelly and Gallego, Congressman Ciscomani last spring when we welcomed the merger of the Tucson Metro Chamber and Sun Corridor Incorporated into the Chamber of Southern Arizona. And that was so we could speak with a larger, stronger regional voice about economic development. And she and I both have leadership roles within that organization. The county, in fact, has a contractual relationship with the Chamber of Southern Arizona, just like we had a contractual relationship with Sun Corridor. We are the biggest public sector supporter of the work of the Chamber. And part of our contract with them is that they will align their efforts with our economic development strategic plan, which we passed 2 years ago. And that economic development strategic plan was vetted by the Federal Economic Development Administration, given its stamp of approval. That's going to help not just the county, but the cities, the towns, the tribes, to be more competitive for grants and other supports to further our economic development efforts. So to come full circle, I think it's important that the mayor of the biggest jurisdiction in our area is immersed in a program where she's going to learn more about effective economic development strategies. But the only way that we're going to advance ourselves in that realm is by acting collaboratively, acting regionally. And that infrastructure is already in place. So I think we need to be looking for greater opportunities to collaborate with each other on a regional basis.
Well, I'm not going to give you any argument on regionalism. I think that's what we're missing here is the regional approach. Now, we asked for calls. We've got one.
All right.
We're going to go back to that one of your favorite issues, property taxes. So we've got Chuck on line 2 with a question on property tax. Chuck, thank you for joining us and appreciate you calling in.
Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Scott, I believe I I think I caught this right. You did say that you set the rate for our property taxes yesterday or the day before, whenever, and the rate went up, right?
That is correct. It did, and it
Okay,
was
but you
mostly,
did not-
and
but
it was
You did not tell us. Wait a minute. You did not tell us how much of an increase that rate is. I would like to know that.
so the increase was right around 26 cents over what was in the overall property tax rate last year. And that was, again, mostly based on cost shifts from the state of Arizona to not just Pima County, but the other 14 counties. And we have a board policy in place whereby we adjust the rate based on the amount of cost shifts that are coming to us from the legislature. The Arizona has a balanced budget amendment, and it also has in its state constitution, and it also has a measure in its state constitution, which our voters put in place back in 1992, that says that any revenue measure in the legislature, not just a tax increase, but rolling back any previously enacted tax credits or tax cuts, requires a 2/3 majority of both houses of the legislature. That is extraordinarily unlikely to happen. And so anytime they face the possibility of there not being a balanced budget, which they're required to have, they look at two things, spending cuts or shifting costs to counties and other local jurisdictions.
Okay, but now, knowing that the increase is 26 cents, my rate, I can be pretty well confident in saying that my assessment is also going to go up, which means I can be hit with a pretty large property tax increase, correct?
I don't think it will be as significant as you're describing, because the overall property tax rate is still lower than it has been in most years over the last 15-year period. We're always taking into account not just the increase in valuation, and you're right that the valuation of our tax base has gone up 9 of the last 10 years, but we're also taking into account that we're not the only property tax assessing entity in the valley. There's the school districts, the fire districts, Pima Community College, the Central Arizona Water Conservation District. So we're always trying to keep the rate as low as we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate the call. Yeah, that's one of those tough ones that you deal with, because you have the assessment of the homes, which routinely, because the value of the homes have been going up, the assessments have been going up as well. And I know in the past, some of the criticism's been you've cut the tax rate, but with the assessment, it works out either as a push or a tax increase. And so then then you get into the conversation of, are you raising taxes or are you cutting taxes? And rate is a big difference, and assessed values are two different things. It's kind of like the same thing when we're talking on how to raise funds through a sales tax. Do you raise the rate of the sales tax, or do you increase the pie? In other words, more economic development, attract more businesses that are then contributing to that sales tax revenue. And that kind of leads back to our discussion on the economic development. So big supporters. The county has funded, I believe, $500,000 this year.
$650.
$650. So a raise to the Chamber of Southern Arizona. And you see that as the regional approach. It's through the cooperation between the entities. Now, the county also has its own economic development arm, as does the city.
Correct.
How do those play into that relationship with Sun Corridor?
So the role of the county's economic development department is very symbiotic with regard to its relationship with the Chamber of Southern Arizona. When there's a major employer that is looking at coming to the area, The chamber will often rely on the economic development department within the county and the Office of Economic Opportunities within the city to provide them with the kind of data that prospective employers are looking for. So there's a lot of collaboration between those two entities. Our economic development department is also focused on making sure that all of the components of our economic development strategic plan are being furthered in terms of trying to recruit targeted industries, partnerships with the Arizona Commerce Authority. There was a discussion yesterday at the board, for example, about what more the county economic development department could do to further our relationship with Mexico, our biggest trading partner. So there really is a lot of collaboration between the two entities. And if you look at the contract between the contract and, the contract between the chamber and the county, there's a T-chart that shows on one side the responsibilities and areas of focus of the Economic Development Department, and on the other side, the responsibilities and areas of focus of the Chamber of Southern Arizona. And we actually asked for that delineation of responsibilities last year when we were considering our final contract with Sun Corridor, which of course merged with the Tucson Metro Chamber to become the Chamber of Southern Arizona. And there are regular meetings between our staff and the chamber staff to not only talk about their contractual obligations to the county, but also how we are each staying in our own lanes.
So as the chair of the board, what areas would you like to see our economic development efforts focused on?
I think we need to build on where we've already got some strengths in logistics, in aerospace. I have also heard that in terms of automotive supply, that's an area that the chamber is looking at. But
especially with that relationship south of the border, there's
Definitely.
a lot of automotive manufacturing parts, and people are unaware, and this is where tariffs on autos have an impact.
Yes.
How many times vehicles cross the border in their process of being created? Because
No
there's
question.
stuff they can do more efficiently and effectively and cheaper in
No
Mexico,
question.
and there's stuff they need to do in here in the U.S.
Absolutely. And we have targeted industries in the economic development strategic plan for the county. The city has them, and certainly the Chamber of Southern Arizona does. In fact, in that meeting that I attended recently, and it was at the airport, which is another area that we need to emphasize.
TA, a strong supporter of the Morning Voice engagement hours on Tuesdays here. They're one of our sponsors.
Fantastic. But they were talking about the targeted industries that the chamber has been focusing on for many years and how they developed that list.
Well, we need to bring new money here. There's no doubt. So we need to cut to a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about something that I think is a huge economic driver, and it's near and dear to both of our hearts because of your service on the PAG and RTA board in the past. We'll come back and we'll talk about the Regional Transportation Authority and where it sits and your thoughts on it going forward.
Absolutely.
All right, you're listening to 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. Stay with us.
At 8:53, with a look at your traffic and weather, I'm Matt Neely on 1030 The Voice. Traffic hazard Euclid at Broadway. Crash Broadway at Alvernon. Traffic hazard 12th Avenue at Veterans Boulevard. Crash at La Cholla and 36th Street. And a traffic hazard Irvington at Kolb. On your freeways, still some slowing in between on I-10 eastbound in between Cortero and Sunset. Doesn't look too bad at this point. Tucson weather high today, 102 degrees, 20% chance of thunderstorms. Overnight low 78, 104 for your high tomorrow with a 30% chance of storms. Under clearing skies, it's 88 degrees. Wind Tucson coming up right around the corner at 9 o'clock. Now back to the Morning Voice.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us for the last segment of the Morning Voice. I'm your host, Ted Maxwell. Matt Neely behind the glass doing another outstanding job back there. And my guest right now is Supervisor Rex Scott, the chair of the board. And I encourage you to stay with Kathleen Wynn for Win Tucson immediately following this show as well. So for years, before you became the board chair, which I told you I was mad when you became the board chair because you were going to give up another seat. And that seat was as your role as the board's representative on Pima Association of Governments and the Pima Regional Transportation Authority.
Right.
So over the years, I would say you and I worked together, spending a lot of time trying to get closer to agreement on a plan.
No question.
And as you know, since your time in that seat, did you take that role for the board when you first were elected?
Yes.
Okay. So you were in that seat for
4
years.
Mm-hmm.
4 years.
Right.
We've had incredible amounts of public outreach, incredible amounts of input from the the Citizens Advisory Committee, from the Technical Management Committee, and I even said at the last board meeting, I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee for 2 years before I came onto this board, which I've been on for 5 years now. We've had a ton, but we could never get it across the finish line until last Thursday. So have you had an opportunity to look at the new RTA plan, which has a couple items that weren't there when you were in it. It's still got road projects. There's 30 new road projects.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about 1.1 billion, or as my wife reminds me, say it in percentages. That's about 38% of the budget. We've got money in there for safety to about the tune of 10, safety, ADA, and active transportation for about 10%. RTO rehabilitation, a new item that was added while you were on the board, which will help fix the roads, $178 million. Again, just under 10%. $50 million in there for some environmental things, wildlife crossings, things that have had some success in this region of training the wildlife to divert where they go in a more better and safe manner. But we also added a new category called RTA 1 completion. And in there, we put $262 million when combined with some other PAG money. We can now guarantee that there's enough funding, as forecast right now, to complete all these RTA 1 projects with a high level of security. Therefore, it got all the mayors on board. We ended up having a 6-2 vote. The only 2 no votes were Matt Hines, your replacement, as Supervisor Hines, representing District 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 5's Andres Cano. I always got to remember those 2. Those are the 2 I confuse. And Chairman Jose from the Tohono O'odham, who went along with Matt. They felt it needed more public input. My point is, how much public input do you think we've had?
A significant amount. And something else that I recall from those times when I was the county's representative on the RTA board is that there were a lot of meetings where we came into that room not knowing how we could get to a point where all 9 of us could be in accord. And yet there were a number of instances where we did that. And I know you have another meeting coming up on Monday, and that, I believe, is going to be another opportunity for the RTA board to look to a way to find unanimity. And I have had a long-standing policy since I was elected to the Board of Supervisors, which is that I don't talk to or about my colleagues on the air.
Oh, I can't get you to
But-
do that? Come
no,
on.
no. But I do think that there are conversations that can be had next Monday that will address the concerns of the two people who voted no last time.
Perfect. I appreciate your continued support of RTA. Thank you for joining us on
Thank you.
The Morning Voice, and listen in next week. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. Have a
Thanks
great
very
week.
much, Ted.
Thank you.
All right.